The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of the penthouse, golden liquid spreading like blood across the white stone. Phoebe stood frozen in the doorway, her custom silk dress, a deep emerald that complemented her dark skin like a jewel in its setting, suddenly feeling too tight around her chest. "Say that again," she whispered, her British accent cutting through the tension like a blade. "Say it to my face this time, Kong Miho." The man sprawled across the leather sofa didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Miho, with his sharp jawline and hair falling carelessly over his forehead, simply smirked. That same devastating smile that had first caught her attention 6 months ago at the fashion gala. Behind him, his phone lay face up on the glass coffee table, the voice on speaker still laughing. "Come on, Hyung, you've had your fun with the black girl. The bet's over. You won the money. You satisfied your little exotic fantasy." Phoebe's hand shot out, ending the call with one swift motion. The silence that followed was deafening. "Phoebe?" Miho started, rising from the sofa with that predatory grace that had once made her heart race. Now it only made her sick. "Don't." Her voice was steady, controlled. Years of building her fashion empire from nothing had taught her never to let them see you break. "Don't you dare say my name like it means something to you." He had the audacity to reach for her, his fingers brushing against her wrist. She jerked away as if burned, her mind racing back through every moment of the past 6 months. Every gift, every whispered promise, every night she'd spent in his arms. All of it suddenly felt like a transaction she hadn't agreed to. "How much?" she asked, her dark eyes meeting his without flinching. "How much did you win by fucking me?" Miho's jaw tightened. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Guilt, perhaps, or maybe just annoyance at being caught. "It wasn't like that." "How much?" Her voice cracked like thunder, and she saw him actually flinch. Good. Let him feel a fraction of what was tearing through her chest. 500 million won. His voice was quiet. "But Phoebe, listen." She laughed then, a sound so bitter it could have curdled milk. 500 million won. About 300,000 pounds. The price he'd put on her dignity, her body, her heart. "You know what the funny thing is?" She walked further into the penthouse. His penthouse, filled with his things and his money and his lies. Her heels clicked against the floor with each measured step. "I actually thought you were different. Me, Phoebe Mensah, who's seen every game, who built a business from scratch in 3 different countries, who never lets anyone make a fool of her. I actually believed you cared." She'd met him at the Seoul Fashion Week afterparty, when she'd only been in Korea for 3 months. Even then, she'd been turning heads. Her designs were already catching fire in Gangnam, her boutique becoming the secret everyone wanted to know. She remembered how he'd approached her, not with the fumbling curiosity most Korean men showed when they saw her, but with confidence. Dangerous, intoxicating confidence. "You're Phoebe Mensah," he'd said, not asked. "The designer everyone's talking about." "And you are." She'd looked him up and down deliberately, taking in the perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit, the Patek Philippe watch, the aura of power that clung to him like expensive cologne. "Someone who wants to know you better." She should have known then, should have recognized the calculated charm, the way he seemed to know exactly what to say, exactly how to touch her. But she'd been lonely in Seoul, despite her success. Lonely and perhaps a little too confident in her ability to spot a player. Their first date had been at a private restaurant in Cheongdam-dong, the kind of place where you needed connections just to get a reservation. He'd asked about Ghana, about growing up in London, about her journey to Seoul. He'd seemed genuinely fascinated by her stories of learning to sew from her grandmother in Accra, of selling her first designs at Camden Market, of the leap of faith it took to expand to Asia. "You're fearless," he'd said, his dark eyes intense over the rim of his wine glass. "I'm practical," she'd corrected. "Fear doesn't pay the bills or build empires." He'd laughed at that, and the sound had done something dangerous to her heart. Their first kiss had happened in his car, a sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than her first boutique. He'd driven her home, walked her to her door, and when she turned to say goodnight, he'd cupped her face with both hands, tender, almost reverent, and kissed her like she was something precious. She'd invited him inside that night, Now, standing in his penthouse with the truth burning holes in her chest, she could barely remember that woman who'd giggled as he'd unzipped her dress, who'd gasped his name as he'd carried her to bed, who'd fallen asleep wrapped in his arms feeling safer than she had in years. "I fell in love with you," Miho said suddenly, and Phoebe's attention snapped back to the present. "The bet was stupid, yes. It started as a game with my friends. But Phoebe, what we have, that became real. Became real." She turned to face him fully, and she saw him take a step back from whatever he saw in her expression. "You mean after you'd already slept with me? After you'd already paraded me around to all your friends? After you'd already collected your money?" "It wasn't about the money." "Then what was it about, Miho?" She moved closer now, and there was something predatory in her movements that he'd never seen before. "Was it about the novelty? About being able to tell your friends you'd bagged an African woman? About satisfying some weird fetish you had about black women?" His silence was answer enough. Phoebe felt something crack inside her chest, but she refused to let it show. She'd learned from the best. From her mother who'd raised her alone in Accra until she was 7. From her aunt who'd brought her to London and taught her that tears were a luxury poor immigrant girls couldn't afford. From every racist boutique owner who'd refused to stock her designs until she'd made them too successful to ignore. "Get out," she said quietly. "This is my apartment. Then I'll leave." She turned on her heel, heading for the bedroom where half her clothes were scattered, where they'd made love just that morning, where she'd whispered that she loved him and he'd held her close and said nothing. She should have known from the silence. Phoebe grabbed her overnight bag and started throwing in essentials. Her hands were steady even as her mind raced. 6 months. 6 months of dates and gifts and introducing her to his world. 6 months of him showing her soul through his eyes. The hidden speakeasies in Itiwan, the traditional tea houses in Insadong, the private clubs where Korea's elite gathered. 6 months of feeling like she'd finally found someone who saw her, really saw her, not just the successful designer or the bold African woman or the exotic foreigner, but Phoebe. She laughed bitterly as she zipped up her bag. How stupid could she have been? "Phoebe, please." Miho appeared in the doorway, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. "Let me explain. Let me make this right." "Make it right." She pushed past him, her shoulder hitting his chest hard enough to make him stumble. "You made a bet about dating me. You used me. There's no making that right. I love you." She stopped at the front door, her hand on the handle. For a moment, she wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But she'd built her entire life on reading people, on understanding what they wanted and how they'd act. And what she heard in his voice now wasn't love. It was desperation. The desperation of a man who'd had something good and realized too late that he'd destroyed it. "No," she said softly. "You love the idea of me. You love how I look on your arm, how I make you feel sophisticated and worldly. But you don't love me. Because if you did, you never would have made that bet in the first place." She opened the door and stepped out, and she didn't look back. The elevator ride down from the 40th floor felt like falling. Phoebe stared at her reflection in the mirrored walls. Her hair was still perfect, her makeup unsmudged, her dress immaculate. She looked like she had everything together. She wondered if her reflection was lying too. Outside, the Seoul night was alive with lights and noise. November had brought a chill to the air, and Phoebe wrapped her coat tighter around herself as she hailed a cab. She gave the driver the address of her own apartment in Hanamdong, the space she'd barely used since she'd started spending most nights at Miho's place. As the cab pulled away from his building, her phone buzzed. A text from him. "Please come back. We need to talk." She deleted it without responding. Then another. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." Deleted. Another. "Phoebe, I love you. Please believe me." She turned off her phone. Back in her own apartment. Smaller than his but decorated with her own touches, her own personality. Phoebe finally let herself sit down. She kicked off her heels, poured herself a glass of wine from the bottle she kept for special occasions, and stared out at the glittering Seoul skyline. She should be crying, she thought. She should be devastated. 6 months of her life had been a lie. The man she'd loved, and she had loved him, God help her, had been using her. But as she sat there in the dark, wine glass in hand, Phoebe realized something. She wasn't heartbroken. She was furious. And Phoebe Mensa had learned a long time ago that fury was far more useful than tears. Her mind started turning, calculating. She thought about everything Miho had given her. Access to his world, connections to Korea's elite, entree into circles she never could have reached on her own. She thought about his friends, his business associates, his family. She thought about his brother, Kang Juno, 2 years older than Miho, quieter but somehow more dangerous. She'd met him twice. Once at a family dinner where he'd barely spoken but had watched her with sharp, intelligent eyes, and once at a gallery opening where he'd made polite conversation about her work and seemed genuinely impressed by her business acumen. He'd also been distinctly unimpressed by his brother's behavior that night. She remembered. Miho had been drunk and loud, showing her off like a trophy. Juno had pulled him aside at one point, and although Phoebe hadn't heard what was said, Miho had been sullen and quiet for the rest of the evening. A slow smile spread across Phoebe's face. Oh, this could be interesting. Her phone buzzed again. She turned it back on out of habit. But this time it wasn't Miho. It was her best friend and business partner, Amma, video calling from their boutique. Girl, where are you? Amma's face filled the screen. Her own Ghanaian features creased with concern. Miho's been calling the shop looking for you. He sounds desperate. Good, Phoebe said simply. Amma's eyes widened. Oh no, what happened? So Phoebe told her. Everything. The overheard phone call, the bet, the money, the fetish. As she spoke, she watched Amma's expression go from shock to fury to something that looked like murder. That bastard, Amma hissed. That absolute bastard. I'm going to cut off his... Don't, Phoebe interrupted. And there was something in her voice that made Amma pause. Don't do anything. Not yet. What do you mean not yet? Phoebe took a sip of her wine, savoring the taste. I mean, I'm going to handle this my way. Phoebe. Amma's voice held a warning. What are you planning? Nothing he doesn't deserve. Phoebe's smile could have cut glass. He wanted to play games? Fine, let's play. But this time, I'm the one making the rules. Phoebe woke the next morning to her phone vibrating off her nightstand. She groaned, reaching for it with one eye still closed, expecting more desperate messages from Miho. Instead, she found 73 notifications, missed calls, texts, social media tags, news alerts. She sat up, suddenly wide awake. The first thing she saw was a text from Amma. OMG girl, check Dispatch. Dispatch, Korea's most notorious celebrity news outlet. The same one that had exposed countless scandals and relationships. With a sinking feeling, Phoebe opened the link Amma had sent. The headline made her blood run cold. Gangnam Mafia Prince Kang Miho and foreign designer Phoebe Mensa. The bet that shocked high society. There were photos, her and Miho at restaurants, at clubs, at fashion events. And worse, there were screenshots. Screenshots of a group chat where Miho and his friends had discussed the bet in explicit detail. I'm going to get with the African designer. 500 million. One says I have her in my bed within a month. Hyung, that's too easy. She's already into you. Fine. 500 million says I make her fall in love with me within 6 months. Real love. The kind where she says it first. Phoebe's hands trembled as she scrolled through the article. They had everything. Every degrading comment, every crude joke, every moment where Miho had reported back to his friends about their relationship like she was some kind of experiment. Her phone rang. Amma, don't read the comments, Amma said immediately. Promise me you won't read the comments. But Phoebe was already scrolling down, and what she saw made her stomach turn. Korean netizens were vicious, but she hadn't expected this level of vitriol. She's just a gold digger anyway. What did she expect? Foreigners always try to trap rich Korean men. At least he had fun before dumping her, lol. But then she saw other comments. Different ones. This is disgusting. Kang Miho should be ashamed. She didn't deserve this. No one deserves this. Her designs are actually amazing. I bought one of her dresses last month. The way Korean men treat foreign women is shameful. We need to do better. Phoebe, Amma's voice cut through her thoughts. Say something. You're scaring me. Who leaked this? Phoebe's voice was eerily calm. No one knows. The article says it's from an anonymous source close to the situation. Phoebe's mind raced. Who would have access to those group chats? Who would benefit from this becoming public? Certainly not Miho. His reputation was in tatters, his friends exposed as callous and cruel. His family business would take a hit too. The Kong family empire was built on luxury hospitality, and this kind of scandal was poison to their image. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Unknown number. Something told her to answer. Ms. Mensa. The voice was male, cultured, speaking perfect English with just a hint of a Korean accent. This is Kong Juno. I believe we need to talk. Phoebe's heart skipped a beat. Miho's brother. The quiet one. The dangerous one. I'm listening, she said carefully. Not over the phone. Can you meet me? There's a cafe in Samcheongdong Dawn. It's quiet, private. Say in an hour. Phoebe glanced at the clock. 9 in the morning. She should say no. She should have nothing to do with anyone in that family ever again. But curiosity, and something else, something darker and more calculating, made her pause. I'll be there, she said. I have to go, Phoebe said, ending the call before her friend could protest. She moved through her morning routine on autopilot. Shower, skincare, makeup applied with the precision of armor. She chose her outfit carefully. A custom blazer in deep burgundy over a black silk blouse, tailored trousers that made her legs look endless, and her favorite Louboutins. Looking at herself in the mirror, she looked successful, powerful, untouchable. No one would know that underneath. She was still processing the betrayal, still feeling the sting of seeing her private pain made public. The cab ride to Samcheongdong gave her time to think. Why did Juno want to meet? Was this some kind of damage control for the family? An attempt to pay her off to make her sign an NDA? The cafe was tucked away on a quiet street, all traditional Korean architecture blended with modern minimalism. Through the window, she could see Juno already seated at a table in the back. He stood when she entered, and she was struck again by how different he was from his brother. Where Miho was all flash and charm, Juno was restrained elegance. Taller, broader in the shoulders, with eyes that missed nothing. Thank you for coming, he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. A pot of tea was already steeping on the table. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. Phoebe sat down, crossing her legs and meeting his gaze directly. But I'm curious. What does Kong Juno want with the woman his brother destroyed? A flicker of something, pain? Anger? Crossed Juno's face. To apologize, first of all. What my brother did was unforgivable. You're not responsible for his actions. No, but I knew. Juno poured tea for both of them with steady hands. Not about the bet, not specifically. But I knew he was playing some kind of game. I saw the way he talked about you to his friends. I should have warned you. Why didn't you? He was quiet for a long moment, staring down at his tea. Honestly, I thought you'd figure it out on your own. You struck me as someone too smart to be fooled by Miho's usual tricks. But then I watched you fall for him, and I realized. He looked up, his eyes intense. I realized he was better at lying than I'd given him credit for. Or maybe you brought out something in him that made him want to be better. Either way, by the time I understood how deep you were in, it felt too late to say anything without seeming like I was interfering. Phoebe sipped her tea. It was excellent. Some kind of delicate green tea that probably cost more per gram than gold. Did you leak the story to Dispatch? Juno didn't even blink. Yes. The admission hung in the air between them. Phoebe set down her cup carefully. Why? Because my brother needed to face consequences for his actions. Because those friends of his needed to be exposed. Because you deserved the truth before he could spin some story to make himself look better. Juno leaned forward slightly. And because the Kong family has gotten away with too much for too long. It's time we stopped protecting our worst members. Noble of you, Phoebe said, her tone dry. Though I notice you didn't use your name as the source. Would you have preferred I did? She considered this. No. Actually, anonymous is better. More mysterious. More likely to keep people interested in the story. A small smile tugged at Juno's lips. You're very pragmatic. I have to be. Phoebe met his eyes. Beautiful African women in Korea don't get the luxury of being emotional wrecks. People are already calling me a gold digger and worse in the comments. If I fall apart publicly, it just confirms their biases. So what are you going to do? Thrive. The word came out fierce. I'm going to make my business even more successful. I'm going to show everyone that I don't need Kang Miho or anyone else. And I'm going to make sure he regrets ever thinking of me as a bet. Juno studied her for a long moment, and there was something like admiration in his expression. You know, when I first met you at that family dinner, I thought you were impressive. Smart, beautiful, talented. I couldn't understand what you saw in my brother. I saw what he wanted me to see, Phoebe said bitterly. No, Juno shook his head. I think you saw the person he wanted to be. Miho's not entirely fake. There's something real under all the posturing and games. He's just too much of a coward to let it show unless he thinks there's something in it for him. They sat in silence for a moment, the cafe's gentle music filling the space between them. I have a proposition for you, Juno said finally. Business, not personal. Phoebe raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. The Kang family owns several hotel chains, as you know. We're about to open a new luxury property in Gangnam, the kind of place where celebrities stay, where high-profile events happen. We need someone to design the staff uniforms and to potentially collaborate on the interior design elements that relate to fashion and aesthetics. You want to hire me. I want to hire the best. That happens to be you. Juno pulled out a folder from the bag beside him and slid it across the table. This is the contract. The numbers are generous, more than generous. But it's not charity. I've seen your work. You're exactly what we need. Phoebe opened the folder and almost choked on her tea. The number had a lot of zeros. This is too much, she said automatically. It's market rate for exclusive design rights with a designer of your caliber. Plus, there's a bonus structure based on publicity and reception. Juno's expression was serious. Phoebe, I'm not offering you this because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering it because having you associated with our new property would be a coup. Especially now. Especially now that I'm all over the news? Especially now that you're all over the news and handling it with grace and strength. Juno leaned back in his chair. Public opinion is shifting. People are starting to see you as the victim of my brother's cruelty. Yes, but also as someone who doesn't need pity. Someone powerful in her own right. If you accept this contract, it sends a message. Phoebe Mensah doesn't need Kang Miho. She never did. It was brilliant, Phoebe had to admit. And the money would allow her to expand her boutique, maybe even open a second location. She'd been planning to expand anyway, but this would accelerate her timeline by years. But there was something else here, something unspoken. What do you get out of this? She asked bluntly. Besides good publicity for your hotel? Juno smiled, and it transformed his whole face. For the first time, she saw a hint of the Kang family danger that lurked under his polished exterior. Revenge, he said simply. My brother has always been our father's favorite, despite being less competent and less disciplined. This scandal has damaged his position in the family business. If I bring you on board and the project succeeds, which it will, it proves that I'm the son who should be leading the company forward. Sibling rivalry. How biblical. We're Korean. It's even more intense here. Juno's smile faded. But I mean what I said. This isn't just about using you. I genuinely believe you're the right person for this job. Everything else is just convenient. Phoebe looked down at the contract again. The terms were clear, fair, even generous in some places. She'd be a fool to turn this down based solely on pride or a desire to stay away from the Kang family. And besides, she thought, a plan beginning to form in her mind. This put her right back in Miho's world. Right back where she could make him watch as she succeeded without him. I'll need my lawyer to review this, she said. Of course. Take your time. Juno started to stand, then paused. Phoebe? For what it's worth, I'm sorry about what happened. You deserved better. Yes, Phoebe said simply. I did. She watched him leave, then sat alone with her tea and the contract, her mind spinning. This was dangerous. Getting involved with another Kang brother, even in a purely professional capacity, could blow up in her face. But the opportunity was too good to pass up. And if she was being honest with herself, there was something thrilling about the idea of walking back into that world. Not as Miho's girlfriend, not as someone's conquest, but as Phoebe Mensah, independent businesswoman and creative force. Let them all watch her rise. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Miho. I saw the news. I'm so sorry this got out. Please let me explain in person. Phoebe deleted it without a second thought. She had more important things to think about now. She was building an empire, and she was going to make sure everyone who'd ever doubted her had a front row seat. The rest of the day passed in a blur of phone calls and meetings. Her lawyer reviewed the contract and confirmed what Phoebe already suspected. It was legitimate and favorable. By evening, she'd signed. The announcement went out that night on the Kong Corporation's social media. Renowned designer Phoebe Mensah would be collaborating on their new luxury property. The comments section exploded. Wait, they're hiring her after the scandal? This is such a power move. I love it. Kong Juno is so much better than his trashy brother. She's going to make millions while Miho drowns in his own mess. As she should. Amma called screaming. Girl, you didn't tell me you were signing with Kong Corporation. It happened fast, Phoebe said, unable to keep the smile out of her voice. This is brilliant. Do you know what this means? You're not just surviving the scandal, you're leveraging it. You're a genius. I learned from the best. Phoebe thought of her mother, who'd never let anyone see her sweat. Besides, why should I hide? I didn't do anything wrong. Have you heard from Miho? He keeps texting. I keep deleting. Good. Let him suffer. Amma paused. But babe, be careful. Getting involved with his family, even for business, it's risky. I know. Phoebe looked out her window at the Seoul skyline. All those glittering lights representing dreams and dangers in equal measure. But I didn't come to Korea to play it safe. I came to win. That night, alone in her apartment, Phoebe allowed herself one moment of vulnerability. She pulled out her phone and scrolled back through her photos with Miho. There she was, laughing at something he'd said. There they were, sharing dessert at an expensive restaurant. There was the selfie they'd taken at Seoul Tower. The city spread out behind them like a promise. She'd been so happy. But happiness built on lies was just another form of misery. Phoebe deleted the photos, one by one, until her camera roll showed no trace that Kong Miho had ever existed in her life. Tomorrow, she would start designing for the new hotel. Tomorrow, she would begin building something real, something hers, something no one could take away. But tonight, just for a moment, she let herself feel the grief. Let herself mourn what she'd thought they had, what she'd believed they could be. And then she dried her eyes, poured herself a glass of wine, and started sketching. The best revenge, after all, was living well. And Phoebe Mensah was about to live extraordinarily.
Hello besties, the story is only getting started. Stay tuned for episode 2. Kindly like, subscribe and share.